conference. First, we're going to have the speakers come up, make their remarks, and then there will be time for questions afterward. Okay, first I'm going to be calling up the Chief of Visalia Police Department, Jason Salazar. And next I will be calling up the Chief of the Porterville Police Department, Eric Proto. And I will also be calling up Lieutenant Candy Alvarez, also from Visalia Police Department. And last, I will be calling up District Attorney Tim Moore.
Thank you, Mickey. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here. First, let me say that collectively our thoughts and our prayers extend to the family of Correctional Deputy Eugene Mago, as well as our condolences to the entire family of the Tulare County Sheriff's Department. I know that Sheriff Mike Boudreau really wanted to be here today and be a part of this. But we did think it's worthy to share recent development in the Red Soul case. By now, we're all aware that Operation Red Soul, which was a multi-agency gang sweep, if you will, resulted in the arrest of about 80 criminal defendants, and subsequently criminal charges were filed. The Red Soul operation did not conclude with that sweep. The work did not end at that point, even after we filed what to this day still remains as the largest criminal filing in the history of Tulare County. There were over 151 separate counts. Today, the purpose of this conference is to announce that a special grand jury was impaneled on November 14th, 2016 for the purpose of presenting evidence related to Red Soul. On December 15th, 2016, that grand jury indicted 11 of the original defendants that were charged. The filed indictment contains approximately 65 felony counts ranging from murder to conspiracy to commit murder and numerous other dangerous crimes. The indictment has been filed, and we anticipate those defendants to be arraigned as early as this afternoon. For a historical context, we should say that Red Soul began in the spring of 2015, and although the sweep arrest occurred in October 1st, again, that did not conclude the work, not only by members of our office, but by law enforcement that you see represented here today, the Tulare County Sheriff's Department, as well as the men and women that work for the Department of Justice coming in as well. Since the filing of the original complaint, the Office of the District Attorney's work dedicated a lot of hours to hold these defendants accountable. We've had a staff of about 10 prosecutors directly working on this case. That does not involve or include the number of criminal investigators or the numerous support staff that's dedicated time and resources to seeing these cases proceed through the criminal court system. To date, over half, about 40 defendants, have been convicted and sentenced for a myriad of crimes related to the Red Soul operation, such as conspiracy to commit assault with a deadly weapon, home invasion robberies, a number of drug-related drug sales offenses, and possession of deadly and dangerous weapons, and I think even possession of assault weapons as well. These defendants that have been convicted so far collectively have been sentenced to over 150 years in state prison. That does not include jail time, local jail time connected to the felony probation sentences for what we'll say are the lesser involved defendants that were convicted. That left about 31 criminal defendants still pending charges. Of those, 9 defendants have already had their preliminary hearings heard. They have been held to answer and are currently awaiting trial. Approximately 22 defendants had yet to have their preliminary hearings heard since the original complaint was filed in 2015. These 11 indicted defendants make up half of that number. We impaneled this grand jury because these 65 crimes involve an intertwined series of events, had overlapping evidence, and the indictment will undoubtedly save the resources and time, not only of our office, but court resources, and very importantly, the resources of our law enforcement agencies. Both the people and the victims' families have a constitutional right to a speedy trial. This should facilitate that. Since 2015, numerous officers were subpoenaed time and time again for court. By utilizing the grand jury process, we can alleviate this burden to a large degree and allow those law enforcement officers to be focused on working in our communities where they belong, especially over the holiday period. I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to thank and express our gratitude to the members of the grand jury who dedicated their time and energies over this last month, including the Thanksgiving holiday and coming up on the Christmas holiday as well. As with all jurors, on behalf of the law enforcement community of Tulare County, I want to say that we appreciate your service and you have our gratitude. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank our law enforcement partners and our members of the Department of Justice who have a representative here today. I want to thank you because your officers have come to court time and time again, and we hope that this indictment will help ease the burden on your State Department as well. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce some of our speakers today, and we'll start with Chief Jason Salazar. Jason.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us here today. I come to you today just as a reminder, on October 1st, 2015, we stood before you in a press conference announcing the detail that we dubbed Operation Red Soul, which was led by our Target Task Force. And Target is an acronym for the Tulare Area Regional Gang Enforcement Team. That is a task force that is led by the California Department of Justice, and participants are the Visalia Police Department, Tulare County Sheriff's Office, California Highway Patrol, and Tulare Police Department. And this particular investigation also involved a great deal of assistance from the Porterville Police Department. This was on October 1st, 2015, when Operation Red Soul came to the operational conclusion, if you will. We made 52 arrests that day and served in excess of 70-some search warrants, targeting the Norteño criminal street gangs and their impact on criminal street gang violence across Tulare County, not just in Visalia or Porterville, but really on a county-wide impact. And so I think we have seen the results and the benefits of that operation over the course of the last year through the impact on criminal street gang activity. But criminal street gangs are still an entity that we will continue to fight, and we will do so aggressively. And I believe, a big thanks to the District Attorney Tim Ward and the Tulare County District Attorney's Office for their role in taking these cases forward and seeking prosecution and justice, and making sure that we continue a successful fight against the impact of criminal street gangs in Tulare County and in each of our communities. With that said also, he mentioned the grand jury process, which we are grateful for. As you can imagine, a case of this magnitude involves a great deal of resources, and a great deal of resources and effort went into putting this investigation together the day of the operation, and then as we culminate through the court process as well. This is a process that certainly has helped us, and as he mentioned, keep our resources on the road in our continued fight against criminal street gangs by using this process. So we're excited to hear that this continues. We continue to see the fruits of Operation Red Soul, and look forward to working further to bring this case to a close in our ongoing efforts.
Chief Eric Carotto, Porterville Police Department.
Thank you. If I could just add, this Operation Red Soul is just an example of what happens when area agencies get together and collaborate, especially when you can involve the Department of Justice. As we all know, gang crime is something that is here in our county, and it's something that sometimes it's a little hard to combat just based on the volume. And bringing all these agencies together in order to combat gang crime is what makes it so successful. And my thanks to the Department of Justice, District Attorney Tim Ward, Chief Jason Salazar, Sheriff Mike Boudreau. If you're not aware, some of the major players in this case were from the Porterville area, violent folks from the Porterville area. And since Operation Red Soul, we have noticed a reduction in not just gang crime, but in violent gang crime. So I truly believe our community is safer at this point because of what happened with Red Soul. To echo the comments on the court process, by handling a grand jury and taking these cases straight to jury trial, it does save a lot of resources on our department that we can now go out and focus on continuing our efforts to combat gang violence and to work into the streets rather than being in the courtroom in these processes. So again, I just want to thank everybody who was involved in this case because Porterville is appreciative of that.
I had an opportunity to speak to Sheriff Mike Boudreau this morning, and Mike wanted me to relay that since the Operation Red Soul and through this process, the Sheriff's Department has seen a significant decrease in the amount of gang crime in their jurisdictional areas. And wanted me to relate, if you have any questions on that, hopefully soon he'll be available for those comments. I'm sure Ms. Douglas from the Sheriff's Department can facilitate contact with Mike today. Let me conclude by saying this is not in any way a time for rest or conclusion. The prosecution of not only this indictment, these 11 defendants will go forward, but also the criminal defendants that remain in the court process so far. The District Attorney's Office, along with our law enforcement partners, are committed to providing justice for the victims and the family and our communities as a whole. Our focus is going to be on that and that alone. Our collective desire is to enforce the people's rights to a speedy jury trial and bring these matters to conclusion and hold all of these offenders accountable. And with that, we'll take some collective questions. There are press packets available which are going to have the individual names of the 11 members in the indictment. The indictment that we filed that should be public record soon here is, I believe, over 200 pages. So that's why you don't have a copy of that today. So we'll open it up for collective questions.
I haven't had a chance to look in the folder, but was the gang leader Pedro Sanchez, is he one of the 11?
Yes. In fact, when we selected the grand jury process, we really started with Mr. Sanchez, or Defendant Sanchez, and went out from there and selected crimes and defendants, if you will, where, imagine a spider web. It went out from there. A lot of the evidence and a lot of the crime are overlapping, and it's the consistent law enforcement officers, the consistent series of events, if you will. And we took that web out and went to 10 other individuals as well. So,
Are these high member or high level members of the Norteño gang?
I think it would be fair to say that, yes.
What was the biggest, the most significant conviction of those convicted so far?
Probably some of the conspiracy counts. I know the longest sentence, one individual sentenced to 20 years. The charge on that, I'll have that for you at the conclusion of this. So I'm sure Ms. Verissimo can check that for us. So.
Can you go further into some of the this gang, the Norteño gang, go into kind of how they did violently run some of the streets in your community? There's sort of the day-to-day operations that they related. How were they terrorizing your communities?
Let me say that with the grand jury process, some of the evidence is still not public at this point, so I need to say it's probably not appropriate to talk about that from the aspect of the indictment that we went forward, but I'd certainly turn it over to our law enforcement officers who can probably speak better to that on a general scale, if you will.
Generally speaking, it's a network of individuals that conspire together to commit crimes where they're involved narcotics, movement of firearms, and then really planning out different types of violent crimes to further the benefit of the criminal street gang. So I won't get into any details as to the day-to-day things that they did. Our investigation really kind of dialed into what they did day-to-day and the networks that they used to collaborate with each other to commit these crimes. And so I think you'll see that hopefully as these cases unfold and more details become available. The case really did focus on the conspiracies that happened on a day-to-day basis, how they communicated with each other, how they operated, and the different types of crimes they committed to facilitate violent crimes. And that's what the investigation focused on primarily, was how they got to those violent crimes and trying to prevent those. I believe, we know we probably prevented at least 7 active types of violent crime incidents as a result of the investigation. On the Visalia Police Department side alone, it also led to successful investigations of 3 different homicides as a result of their activities.
And is it safe to say that they're still dismantled?
I think these gangs are very widespread, and so these gangs we're going to continue fighting these gangs, but that is our role. I think we made a dent in their activities. Are they gone? No, but neither are we, and we will continue to aggressively pursue their activities and to continue to make sure that they can't terrorize our streets.
To answer your question in more of a general sense, gang activity, you can almost think of it as organized crime. So they do a lot of things to promote their organization, if you want to call them organization instead of a gang. And that involves drugs, weapons, as Chief Jason Salazar said. And in order to enforce those crimes or run those crimes, they get involved in very serious felonies up to murder. So in general, they are doing their business out on the streets, and really the citizens are the victims of that sometimes. So that's what they're doing in general. You asked about, was it dismantled? And as the chief said, dismantled might be the wrong word, but definitely disrupted, heavily disrupted, and it's going to take them a long time. Gangs have a hierarchy, and when you're able to take out the top people in that hierarchy like this did, it takes time for them to rebuild that up. So, is it completely gone? Absolutely not. And we just let them know that we're not gone either, and we're going to keep investigating these crimes. So if they try to build back up, we will work and we will take them back down.
So I'm new to this story, but what's the origin of the name for Red Soul?
That's a good question. Typically, the criminal street gangs, identified by colors. This particular gang identified by the color red. That's where red came out of, and honestly, I can't tell you where the soul part came from. That's essentially kind of the gist of where it came from. It certainly targeted one particular criminal street gang and their activities in Tulare County. And as I mentioned before, we will continue to work in investigating the crimes that particular gang continues to commit, as well as other gangs that are still operating in our area, and continue to focus on their activities.
How many homicides are in this indictment? Do you know that?
One homicide, which I believe involves 4 separate defendants, are contained in the indictment. There are, I believe, 3 or 4 other homicides outside of this indictment that are still pending. I believe we have up to 10 to 13 defendants that are involved in those. But to answer your question, Lou, there is 1 murder involved in this indictment, charged in the indictment.
And the other ones that are going through the preliminary hearing process and have gone through it?
I want to make sure I give you correct information on that. I'll have staff double check that and make sure. Like I said, there are 9 defendants that have had preliminary hearings that are awaiting trials. As you imagine, or can imagine, the original complaint is 400 pages. So each individual charge, it's easy to say they have multiple charges. So I want to make sure I give you the correct information. There are still about 10 or 11 individuals that are pre-preliminary hearing. Some serious cases those are. A lot of those are homicide cases. They were not as tangibly or directly related by the evidence, and that's why they were not brought forward in this process at this point. So,
The defendants indicted for murder listed here, is that for that one homicide?
correct.
Okay.
Yes,
So there's 4 of them for one homicide?
that is correct.
Is this costing a lot of money or outside your budget to deal with this?
Well, that's a tough question to ask. Certainly, this has been a lengthy process. We have, at least out of the district attorney's office, we're paying for this out of our budget. Our county board of supervisors, CAO, understands that, quite frankly, this is our job, and they give us the resources to do it. But that said, certainly you have to look at the fact that by utilizing the grand jury process, not only have we accelerated the case, we've sped it up, I guess would be another way of saying that, past the preliminary stage. Now we can begin looking and selecting a trial date. And so from that standpoint, certainly it's going to save some degree of court resources. It's going to save staff resources. Like I said, we've got a team of about 10 attorneys that have been directly involved in the prosecution of this case. Those men and women have a lot of other cases on a day-to-day basis to deal with. They have a lot of other homicide cases that they're working on. So we're going to hope that we can bring justice to the families involved, first and foremost. But in doing so, we can alleviate the burden on our office. And I think like Chief Crow and Chief Salazar said, this has been a burden on law enforcement as well. And each day that we send subpoenas out, officers are subpoenaed. And you can imagine the burden that has on law enforcement for coordinating schedules because they may be needed in court and they may not be needed in court. They come to court, they wait around only for that case to resolve and they're sent back out. So certainly it impacts the budget of law enforcement agencies as well. But from a budget standpoint, that's not the driving reason of why we make decisions like this. That's contained in part of the reason we do our job.
How about the one homicide we're talking about, the location of that?
I'll have that information for you at the conclusion of this. So, I believe Visalia. I'm
Can you
being
tell
told
us
from the back of the room Visalia.
Can you tell us the details surrounding that homicide for those who may not?
Yes, like I said, the grand jury process has a lot of evidentiary provisions. At this point in time, it's not appropriate to talk about any of the facts that were presented to the grand jury. So really can't discuss that at this point. So
But it occurred in Visalia. Do you have a date?
We'll get that for you.
Okay.
It'll be on the indictment.
Okay.
That's fine.
I think the crime dates, we're talking from August to about September, October of 2015.
But that exact homicide, you know.
It'd be contained in the
Some of
indictment.
it.
The date of the homicide is public record at this point. It's contained in the indictment. So.
Now, you expect these people to be in court today, or they already been in court?
It's my belief that they will be arraigned today. I believe one defendant has already been arraigned on the indictment this morning, and the rest we anticipate to be arraigned this afternoon.
At the pre-trial?
I think they may actually be occurring here in Visalia. So. Department 5 here in Visalia. So. As the arraignment occurs, as always, our staff is available to provide that information of the next court date and what happened at those court dates. Feel free to contact our office. As you do on any other cases, we can share that information with you as it becomes available. So. Any other questions? So then again, I want to thank the Department of Justice for coming down and being a part of this today, not only today, but part of the entire prosecution of these cases. I know, speaking for all of law enforcement, we really wouldn't be here today without the cooperation of the Department of Justice, so thank you. Thanks to our law enforcement partners, and again, our hearts go out to the Tulare County Sheriff's Department. Thank you.